Hi everyone, welcome back to Be Rich. As you see, Anand is not with us today. He's busy, so I pulled in Sashwath, who's come down for the weekend from his college. So I thought we'll have some face-to-face video with Sashwath. We plan to record a couple of more over the weekend, so you guys will have some content, which will be with me and Sashwath live in the studio together, which will be something different other than doing remote recording. Unless something comes up in the news, which requires an urgent video from me and Sashwath. You're going to be seeing a few videos in the series right now where both of us are in the studio. That being said, there was some interesting news about Japan, which Sashwath had chanced upon. So me and Sashwath thought we'll bring this to you guys and discuss what's happening in Japan, what the Central Bank of Japan is planning to do, and why it has implications to Japan, and what it could mean to us Indians in the Indian context.
Yeah. So I'll just quickly go over the news. So the Central Bank of Japan has followed the Fed. So before we talk about what the Central Bank of Japan has done, let's look at what's happening with the yen. So the yen has been pretty much on a decline because their interest rates have been ultra loose, whereas the rest of the world, especially the United States, has increased its rates. And the latest Fed meeting has said that they're going to raise the interest rate by 0.25%. So that is another hike which was expected, and then there'll be further hikes coming forward, and then maybe they'll stop and then see where they're at. But that being said, a fundamental concept in macroeconomics is that when the interest rate of foreign currency goes up, the domestic currency depreciates generally, because now investors will flock to the foreign currency and want to put their money there because the interest rate is higher. That is the logic behind it, and we've seen this happen time and time again in the past with Japan itself and the yen, and most recently we've seen it happen again now with Japan having ultra loose monetary policy, where they're trying to maintain the interest rate between 0 and 0.5%, whereas the US is offering, I think, 5.25% on their treasury bills. So this is a huge arbitrage opportunity. So a lot of investors are taking their money out of yen and putting it in the dollar and holding on to treasury bills. This is what is happening. Now, that being said, the Central Bank of Japan is facing a kind of inflation they don't want to see. The kind of inflation they wanted to see was because people now have more money in their pockets. They want to spend more on goods. You know, if both of us were given 1,000 rupees now, right now, what would we spend it on? Maybe a t-shirt, maybe a book, so on and so forth. This helps the economy. This boosts inflation because now there's greater demand in the economy. That's what Japan wanted to do. But surprisingly enough, the headline inflation which Japan has been seeing is not coming from both of us being given 1,000 rupees or 1,000 yen and then spending it, but rather that the cost of things have gone up because of supply chain problems. And not just supply chain problems, imports have become more expensive. Japan imports oil and food, and what Japan has ended up seeing is that oil and food both have increased in prices. So Japan's inflation is coming from more of a supply side than a demand side. This is not a good news for Japan. So what is Japan planning to do? Now comes the news. The Central Bank of Japan has said, okay, let's raise interest rates a little bit just to keep our yen afloat. And if we keep our yen afloat, import costs will not skyrocket as they have been. So the kind of inflation they want to see now, it's kind of a catch-22 situation. They raise rates, then they stabilize the yen, and they stabilize the yen meaning their import costs go down, and supply push inflation comes down. However, if they do increase interest rates, then your demand push inflation is going to come down as well, which they don't want. They want the consumers to spend, but they don't want prices to go up because of supply chain issues and because of the yen depreciating. So there's a very they're walking a fine line with a tightrope, and this is quite interesting. Yeah.
True. The problem is we being Indians and having this notion of us being a developing country, we always feel having a weak currency is good. That means anything you export, your cost is down. Like all export companies, including IT companies, would like the rupee to get weaker and weaker. That means your spending cost keeps coming down, your revenues keep going up, your spread keeps on improving, and it's great news for the country because that means more dollar flows into the country, your reserves are going up, and it's all good news. But the problem is, this is only viable if you are exporting. Japan's weak yen is not the weak yen of the 1980s. It is a weak yen right post-war time.
Yeah.
When Japan was not making anything and wasn't exporting anything. And Japan was a very poor country at the time. And the people were also, Japanese people were very poor at the time. And there was no development in Japan at that point in time. So what's happening to the Japanese people is their companies are not cutting edge companies anymore. The Sonys are not making anything in Japan anymore. All their factories are outside Japan. There's no real companies making anything in Japan anymore, which is being exported out of Japan. Yes, they're making things which the Japanese are consuming themselves. Don't get me wrong there. They are making things which the Japanese people are buying. But the things being made in Japan and being exported is not there anymore. So this weak yen has no plus point for Japan. All of us looking at it think, okay, a weak currency is good news. That means things coming out of Japan gets cheaper.
Yeah.
And visiting Japan becomes easier. Tourism will expand, which is a double blow for Japan. Because Japanese people culturally also are very homogeneous, meaning they stay within themselves. They really don't like too many tourists coming there. Post-pandemic, when their country opened, they also had a huge resistance from the Japanese population, telling their government, yes, you can open the borders, but let's not open too quickly. Yes, tourism does contribute a lot to our economy, but we don't need it.
And historically, Japan has had a policy of keeping their ports closed. In fact, during colonial times, the British had to basically blast their way through in order to be able to conduct any trade with Japan.
So their culture is like that. So this kind of a weak yen presents a big problem for the Japanese economy. And inflation, yes, they've been trying to target an inflation because they've been in inflation and the birth rate has fallen. The population is aging rapidly. So Japanese yen being weak is not good news for Japan. But the Japanese economy is starting to splutter and show some sign of recovery. The stock market and all this, because it is cheap to buy Japanese companies. You can see Warren Buffett marching in. You're seeing everywhere lots of YouTube videos of people saying it's time to invest in Japan. Japan is a great time to invest. Japanese companies, conglomerates are going dirt cheap. You can buy them. But this compounding problem of the weak yen hurting the population, the Japanese bank had to act and had no choice. What is your input on this?
Yeah, I think yes, one option to strengthen your currency is through interest rates. And just for the sake of argument, we can look at the other ways in which the Bank of Japan could have done something. One could be restricting outflows. That's not a good idea because Japan is a liberal economy, and restricting outflows is definitely never a good idea. So that would cascade into multiple other problems. So if you look at it effectively, yes, you could say if they boosted their exports and they provided subsidies to exports and tried to counteract their trade deficit, yes, but then that'll take a long time. So effectively, what can the Bank of Japan do right now to aid this population which is importing goods like food and oil? What they can do is raise interest rates. That's what they've said. But they haven't straight out the bat come swinging saying that I'm going to raise it to 1%, 2%. They've said, okay, we're going to be flexible and we're just going to see how far we can take it without it hurting our inflation numbers and without it hurting our recovery. So they're being very on the fence about it. They just said that before we very adamantly said that we will not raise rates. Now we're leaving that door slightly open so that in case we need to take that route, we'll be willing to take that route. That is what they've said. So this isn't really a very monumental this thing, but we'll have to wait and watch to see what the Bank of Japan comes up with.
This is typically a good case would be a comparison would be like an ICU patient. You have a very elderly patient in the ICU. You have multiple organs having multiple problems. So if you start medicating, let's say for kidney, it starts affecting the heart. If you try taking care of the heart, it affects the lungs. So multiple problems the Japanese economy has.
Yeah.
So the Bank of Japan is not the general surgeon, is not the doctor in charge of everything. He is only looking at one facet of the economy. The government of Japan has to take up ownership and they have to do something about this.
Yes.
Yes, the reason why the weak yen is getting weaker is because as interest rates are going up everywhere else in the world, there's no point keeping money in Japan. So Japanese money is leaving Japan. They're trying to somehow retain that money inside Japan. Very difficult situation to be in.
Yeah.
And comparing this to India, yes, we can also some future date get into this kind of a problem. The day when our manufacturing base starts becoming less and less competitive and everybody else is catching up to this advantage we have of cheap labor disappears, we'll be in the same boat.
Yes, but cheap labor in the sense IT and pharma rather than manufacturing itself.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. We have a different problem which will come in the future. Unless until we are see this lesson from Japan and our leaders and our youth don't learn from this, 40, 50 years from now, we could be looking at something very similar.
I'd say even earlier, because if you look at the birth and maybe it's a topic for another video, but
Yes.
quickly touching upon it, we are sort of heading to an aging population at some rate, and it's definitely not something which looks very promising.
And it's skewed, South and North India is skewed separately. So you'll see the problem cropping up down south much faster than you'll see it happening up north. But fortunately, because in India, movement between the population state is not restricted.
Yes.
It's right now mixing. So you don't really find it alarmingly bad.
Yeah.
In the case of China, where the population is not allowed to move around freely, inside China, things must be quite bad. But since China is a black box and we really don't know what's happening, especially with all the fuss about the foreign minister who was suddenly stripped off his post, and the liberal media has been beating drums about it for some time.
Yeah.
And he's been removed from every facet of information about him has been removed.
Yes.
Everyone's saying, anything can happen, which is true. Anything can happen. But I don't think it is such a dramatic news as the media is playing out to be.
It's not, and we see it even in liberal democracies. There's a huge fall from grace for multiple people have come, and then there was a campaigner in the 2000s who was running for presidency, and then he said something wrong in one of the presidential campaigns, and he was out of the race completely. So it happens everywhere.
Yeah,
but
that's the problem when the pendulum swings from one side to the other side too fast.
Yeah.
From being a very conservative situation, we switch to a liberal situation very rapidly and very fast. It can create a few hiccups in our society because we do not know where to delineate and draw a line and say, okay, you don't need to take, this is going a little too far.
Yeah.
I think it is happening in the world over. There seems to be a lot of pushback on extreme liberalism to come back towards the center, which is all right. Society is always, like every leader has said, including Obama, progress is never a straight line. It's a jagged line. Some ups and downs will be there. Maybe this is one of those.
One thing which is going for Japan though is that, people like Warren Buffett are pouring in dollars by buying there. But then this is temporary floats called hot money, which is basically you're trying to chase an opportunity and it can go out as soon as it comes in.
Correct.
This can be a stopgap, but it's not really a permanent, it's not a reserve which they own themselves. It's something which it's on borrowed time.
Correct. And Warren Buffett has got a sweet deal which is locked in exclusively for him.
Yeah.
So nothing will happen to him if the interest rates are going up.
He's borrowing in yen and he's buying.
And he set it in stone, this deal. So he will, when his time is over, if it's still profitable at the end of the deal to be in Japan, he'll be there. Otherwise, he'll book his profit and get out.
Yeah.
Which is the right thing for Warren Buffett to do, which is what he's always been doing. He goes where the money is there to be made, where it makes sense for him.
Yes.
But the Japanese economy and the Japanese government have to step up and really look at this hard.
Yeah.
Because the only way they can mitigate this is, like Sashwath said, they have to boost their exports. The only way to boost exports is to create a population which is going to go to your factories and make things for you.
Yeah.
For that to happen, you have to open up your borders and allow mass migration of people to come in, because your population right now is not producing enough workforce.
The funny thing with what's happening around the world, be it your UKs or your USAs or your Japans or your China. Okay, China maybe not, but all these other countries, they rely so much on their central bank, but fiscal planning is like completely out the window. The government just plans to just say, okay, look at the central bank will do its job, fiddle around with your interest rates, and please solve the problem, while we will handle our own thing with fiscal planning.
Correct.
And sometimes you see like completely opposite policies happening.
That's a problem when you have a government which is only there for a short duration of time of 5 years, 6 years or 4 years. Only if you have, especially when as far as the economy is considered, you need a longer grip, a longer term, especially for someone who's running the economy. Because they can't be short-sighted and worry about politics or what's going to happen with the vote. Like India is very famously, all over India, the freebies. We are called the freebie country because for all our politicians immediately open the doors and start doling everything out for free. Because winning the election is what is most important, paramount, not the economy. So the economy goes for a toss cyclically in India every 3 to 4 years, because elections start coming up and the freebies have to be given.
And somehow they expect the RBI to mop up everything and figure it out.
So being the RBI governor in India is a thankless and a fruitless job.
Very thankless.
Yeah.
And it's not just the RBI, it's also your Kate Barker, which we talked about, she also
True.
said that you can't just expect the British central bank to like take care of everything. And same thing for Japan. You just can't expect the Bank of Japan to be able to just figure things out like that.
Correct. And so immediately being a communist or a dictatorship also is not the solution.
Yeah.
Because if, let's say, you're like a Kim Jong-un, you can concoct some crazy ideas, then you can't do anything. So I'm not saying we should not have liberal democracy. We need to, but we need a little more enlightened leaders to lead us and look at it in the long term and not just at short-term gains.
Yes.
And should be okay with losing an election if it's for the greater good. Not worry about holding on to power every single time.
That is a huge ask.
Yeah, it's a massive ask. I know. It's unbelievable that there were leaders in the past, in the whole world, all over the world, who
are willing to do this.
Who are willing to give up their power in terms of principle. Nowadays, it seems to be very hard to find leaders who are willing to give up power for principles. Anyway, that's the time when we live in. I hope the future holds better for the younger generation like Sashwath and Kesav, who's daydreaming behind the camera, wondering why he was asked to sit here. I'm going to be quizzing Kesav after this video on what he sat through with me and Sashwath, and it's going to be an interesting conversation. If you guys would like to watch the video of me asking Kesav what happened in this conversation, please log on to Kesav's Instagram account, where we will have the video on a reel. I'm sure Kesav will be explaining to you what he's understood about Japan in this video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video as always and found it informative and entertaining. And I'll try and bring Anand back, I promise, in the next video or soon. We have a Q&A video lined up, so please do keep dropping in your comments and questions below. Sashwath has tabulated quite a few of the questions where we have worked out all the answers. We'll try and do it when, Sashwath? Tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Yeah, so tomorrow we'll try and record it, so it'll come out in a couple of days.
Yeah.
The Q&A video, so it gives you one more video, one more chance to put in your questions here. Thank you again for joining us on Be Rich.
Thank you.
Please do subscribe to our channel. Turn on the bell notification icon so you'll be notified every time we come up with a new video or any new content. If you do find this kind of content interesting, please do think about sharing it with your friends and family. Thank you again for being on Be Rich.
I'm in Tokyo on work on the 5th of August 2023. I have a lot of following in Japan, Tokyo. Those who want to meet me in Tokyo on 5th August, kindly drop me an email on the address given below or contact us on WhatsApp there. My team would get in touch with you and facilitate the meeting. Once again, I thank you for your support for Be Rich. It's a great privilege and honor that so many of you in thousands have subscribed to my channel and have supported me. I have written 2 books in English, The Alchemy of Money and Ordinary Stocks, Extraordinary Profits. These books are published by us and are ready. If you want to procure a copy, send us a message to the WhatsApp number given below and my team would respond to you. If you want an Amazon Kindle copy, you can click the link below. Finally, those who wish to consult with me can send a mail to berichenglish@gmail.com. Once again, I thank you for your support. If you like this video, press the subscribe button of my channel, hit the like button and turn on the bell notification.